From Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. Perhaps you've seen the essay that begins, "Dear Dzhokhar, you don't know me, but you tried to kill my family." It was written by Deacon Mike Rogers, and it offers a profoundly spiritual response to what came very close to being a profoundly personal tragedy for its author. And I'm very pleased to welcome that author to State of Belief Radio. Mike, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what moved you to write and post this letter.
It was about 4 a.m. on the day after they captured Dzhokhar, the day after they captured their suspect. And I was at home, and I had just gotten in from having a meal out with some friends here in Rome, and I couldn't sleep. And I'd been thinking about, obviously, everybody at home all day. I'd been thinking of my friends and family who are on lockdown. I was getting pictures of SWAT teams walking up and down people's streets. And the neighborhood where they found him was actually where my province of Jesuits is headquartered. So I was looking at a neighborhood that I know very, very well on the news from here in Rome. And at the same time, I was thinking about this person who they were chasing through the streets of Watertown. They shut down the entire city of Boston to find him. And being a human being, just with empathy, thinking, no matter what this person did, I can't imagine how utterly afraid I would be in that moment. And so there were a lot of emotions, a lot of things turning in my head and things that I took to prayer. And at some point I just realized, you know what? The only thing that I can do is also pray for this person. And so this letter is, in fact, in some ways, my prayer. It's my speaking to Dzhokhar, but it's my way of saying to God, this is what I have. These are the feelings that are in my heart and the things that are in my head. And so I need to write this down. And I wrote it down just as a Facebook status. It was meant to go to my friends and family back home who had just survived this crazy day, the ones who had just survived the bombing, and that's where it all started.
Your words are so contrary to the vengeful tone many commentators routinely take in the aftermath of this kind of horrific violence. I know you're just weeks away from your ordination as a Jesuit priest. Do you find this kind of empathy in Scripture, in life experiences? Where do you draw from?
Well, I think I find it first in Scripture. As I said before, the Gospel of John is something we can take seriously or not. When Jesus says to Peter, for example, in the garden, live by the sword or die by the sword, we can choose to take that seriously, or we can neglect it. I find that empathy for Christ, even in those who are coming to take him away to prison, those who are coming to begin the process of his passion and death, to be the kind of thing that I, as a Christian, am challenged by. I, as a Jesuit, am challenged by every day of my life. And I've grown. And I was thinking about the reality that, on September 11th, in fact, my father was in New York City, and we couldn't find him all morning because the cell phone towers were out. And I was thinking about the fact that, over the course of the past 10 years, my response has changed because I don't think I felt as empathetic or as forgiving that day. But I think the other thing that's changed in me over the course of my formation, now leading up to my ordination on June 8th, is that I have had the chance to spend 10 years in prayer. I've had the chance to spend 10 years meeting people all around the world who have so many different life experiences. And, I've realized to some extent, too, that all we can really hope to do sometimes is love somebody the best way that we know how, the best way that we can. And so loving this young man is of course, holding him accountable for his actions if, in fact, he is proven guilty. And there's no questions about that. But it's also a sense of, do I love this person by praying for them? Can I keep doing that? Yes, absolutely. Can I continue to look at this person as a human being? Because that's the challenge sometimes, I think. We choose not to look at somebody as a human being. And I refuse to do that, even to somebody who, as I wrote, tried to kill my family.
I have to confess that as inspiring as your words are, it's also profoundly heartening that tens of thousands of people have found your sentiments to be worth sharing with others. That gives me hope. How does it make you feel?
Well, I'm humbled by it, deeply humbled by it. When I woke up after about 6 hours of sleep on Saturday morning and saw that it had been shared already to thousands of people, beyond people that I knew, I was already humbled by it. So I think that's the first thing. I think I'm grateful, particularly this moment in my life. You know, when you're coming up towards a big moment in your life, like my ordination, have something like this as an affirmation of your ministry is not a bad thing. But I think most importantly, I am grateful that I could help people begin to think about it, begin to talk more about it, begin to share it. And I think, you know, for so many people, the comment that I've heard is, this is what I was thinking and praying about too. And people saying, thank you for that. So if I could give voice to that, if I could give voice to something that could help bring maybe a little more peace into the world and maybe some healing into the world, that I am profoundly grateful to have been able to be a part of that as well. So, you know, humbled and grateful. I think those are the only things that really come to mind at this moment.
Is there just a paragraph of the letter that you could read for us now? And we'll link to it from our website so that all of our listeners can read the whole thing.
Sure. I think the one that really strikes me as somebody who has so many friends and family there, and somebody who realizes he was shaped in who he is. And even in this response, I think a part of my response comes from having lived in Boston. So I think I'll read the paragraph about Boston. Dear Dzhokhar, you failed because Boston was neither bowed nor afraid. You set off a bomb, and the city gave blood for the victims. You escaped initial capture, and the city opened its doors to strangers. You were at large and making more bombs, and we gathered in prayer at Garvey Park and at the cathedral. You went on a rampage, and people stayed home in an orderly fashion and opened their homes to the police during the search. Dear Dzhokhar, you failed because light cast out the darkness, and the man who knew that his boat just didn't look right wasn't afraid to call it in.
If you were to summarize your message very briefly, what would you say?
I think that my message is something I learned through reading the speeches of King and listening to Gandhi, but first and foremost, obviously, the message of Jesus Christ. So the message is probably best summed up by something that Martin Luther King said: "Hate can't drive out hate. Light can't cast out darkness. Darkness can't cast out darkness. Rather, only light, only love can do those things." I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but I think that's what it really comes down to in the end. We can choose to forgive and love and help build a society where these things don't happen because we've gone to the root of it. And I think that's the core of the message.
Deacon Mike Rogers has deep connections to Boston and the marathon. He overcame fear and anger and wrote the much circulated letter to the surviving bomber, which begins with the words, "Dear Dzhokhar, you don't know me, but you tried to kill my family." Mike, I'm so grateful that you added your voice to all that's being said in the aftermath of this horrific tragedy. I wish you all the best for your ordination and ministry, and I'm certain we'll be reading more from you in the future. Thanks so very much for being with us today on State of Belief Radio.
Thank you very much.